All right. Well, thank you so much for being part of one of our first parts of our new episode here at Bring a Voice. And before we start breaking it down, talking about everything that we're going to be talking about, can you give us a little bit about yourself and why we're here today?
Yeah, my name is Dustin Shorr. I'm 37. Live in Astoria with my wife. I work for a hyperbaric company. And the reason that I'm here is to talk about loss as well as support in some of the most difficult times that people may face. So I hope that my words can help somebody.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And we know a little bit about your story. And you're here to talk about kind of a interesting side that a lot of people don't talk about. Your father had cancer, and your father unfortunately passed, but you had a different approach of how you handled it. And we thank you for being this open and smiling for it. But you want to share a little bit about your father and everything that he was going through and what that did with how you handled it or during it, and we'll talk about after a little later. But let's first introduce your father respectfully and hear the story.
Yeah, so my dad's name was Lou. You know, I always just saw him as my role model, as the type of person that I aspired to be, the reason that I want to be a father. I saw the unwilling sacrifice that he made for me and my brother and my mom, and I knew that's what it was to truly be a responsible adult. He was loyal, kind, hardworking, all those adjectives that you could probably give a dog, but he's the type of person that really formed the way that I view the world. So yeah, when he got sick, it was definitely hard for me because he was my best friend.
How old were you?
When he got sick, it was 2014. So 26.
And how old was he?
When he got sick, I mean, he died in 2019 at 68, so 63.
Were you, your brother, you said, and your mother a good support team during the process?
I would like to think so, but knowing the personal struggles that I was going through, we can get into that later. I didn't really handle my father's cancer diagnosis as well as I wish I did looking back. There were things that I should have not done, but I did selfishly, and those are the type of things that you look back and regret.
Well, I don't think, if I can interject, I don't think there's ever selfishness when it comes to trying to define a moment that no one's ever prepared for. I mean, we can all go off the rails, and I don't think that you should ever think less of those moments. Even the bad ones, the good ones, whatever they are, it's still part of the learning lessons of unexplainable events. So I don't know if that's a burden that you ever still carry, but you shouldn't, because you went through life and lessons were taught that weren't, there's no book for this.
Yeah, there's no manual, that's for sure.
Right. There's no pamphlet that comes with cancer, unfortunately. And you said that there was more to the story. And I'm going to get off the subject for a second. Was it, what was treatment like? Was it going through or being there for your father during his treatment that set you in a different mindset than maybe your mother or your brother?
Well, because I was a lot closer with my dad than my brother, I was away from home when he had gotten sick. I was living in Colorado running a business. And at that time, I was already self medicating. I have a bunch of like spinal issues. And that diagnosis kind of put me in a bad place where I was at a fork in the road. And that decision I wasn't strong enough to deal with, and I took the wrong road for a few years. And that's where I do wish I was with my mom more, with my dad, but I did get my act together before he passed away. But I wasn't there for him when he went to chemo treatments. My mom didn't want me to go. She only wanted to be the one with him. We were there when he passed away in the hospital, and that was beautiful, especially considering COVID happened 6 months later, and I got to, as morbid as it sounds, be with my dad as he took his last breaths. I was so mad at God that he took my best friend from me, but God always has a plan, and I don't know what I would have done if he would have died. He died in July 2019. If he would have died in April 2020, so less than a year, I wouldn't have been able to be with him. And the amount of people that were robbed
That's
of so
right.
much dignity, I don't even I can't comprehend it. So I'm it taught me how to be grateful even in some of the worst situations.
That's very special. There's a beautifulness in sometimes the sadness because you're creating a moment that, weirdly, because I know firsthand, you get to look back at and they hit you every once in a while when something just triggers them, and you get to have a personal, private moment that hopefully brings you a smile, some joy, just remembering creating those moments. So we've spoken about your side. And I do want to come back and just what was your father diagnosed with? What was like the treatment like? And just so I think other viewers can understand where your mind was at the time and what your father was going through, because I'm sure there will be people who see this that are going through what he was going through on that end too.
Yeah, so in 2014, my dad was diagnosed with bladder cancer and prostate cancer. So he had an aggressive form of bladder cancer that typically the lifespan of somebody for that is 2 years. So I'm grateful that I got in 5 with him.
Wow.
So they tried a couple of treatments. I think it was called BCG, where they inject something directly into the bladder to try and save his bladder. That didn't work. So they ended up removing his bladder, removing his prostate. So, by way of removal, he was in remission for cancer. But because of how aggressive it was, it had already moved. So a year or two later, for one of his checkups, he got the wonderful diagnosis of kidney cancer. So after the kidney cancer, they tried to again do chemo and everything, but that didn't work. So he needed to have his kidney removed. After that, he was again in remission. And I guess the third time was the charm when he was about to go for his 6 month checkup 2 weeks or so before in early July 2019. He started feeling some pain in his neck and he was starting to not be able to really walk to the end of the driveway to get the newspaper. He was like winded, and we took him to the hospital. He ended up dying 2 weeks later. He never left the hospital and ended up finding out post mortem because he couldn't even drink contrast because his body couldn't handle it that he had lung, liver, and brain cancer.
So
So, you know,
spread.
it was always spreading, and it was just something that I guess, again, trying to be grateful for things. I'm glad that I was able to have 5 years with him instead of two. And I'm glad that he was only suffering for 2 weeks in pain versus people who are in pain for a lot longer. So I have to count my lucky stars where I can.
I know that's hard to understand and probably sometimes say, but I understand.
He never was talking about how he felt bad. He always joked about how he was bald, so he was like, "Look, I'm not really losing any hair to begin with." He was always very upbeat about it. I mean, cancer, unfortunately, is very prevalent in every family, and mine is no different. My grandmother died from lung cancer. My other grandmother died of liver cancer. My grandfather died of, I can't even remember, some type of cancer. And then I had one grandfather who died of diabetes. So I know how cancer can affect generations. And, seeing him deteriorate a little bit was, at least at the end, was very hard for me. And it really put things in perspective when he would tell me, even before he was sick, Dusty, if I can't recognize you or if I'm in too much pain, please put me out of my misery, because if I don't know you and I'm not who I am, what am I doing? And that was something I couldn't even comprehend until I was in that situation with him, because he's my role model. He's my best friend. How could I ever do anything to take him away from the experience of life? But uh, once you see how this affects you, and when you're at the point of really no return, um, sometimes it's best just to spend time with them and be able to create as many memories as you can.
I I understand that very well. So you briefly mentioned, and I hope it's okay that we dive into this. Um, that when you were was in Colorado,
Yes.
you kind of started becoming self-medicated. Do you want to? Was that part of your? I don't want to say healing process or personal process of how to handle what was going on with you emotionally and the separation from being there to because the Colorado and you're from New York, so it's not like you just get in your car and drive down the street.
Yes.
So
I
was
would say,
what was there a specific drug or alcohol or do weird things to cope with it? What was like, I don't want to say poison, but what was your poison?
well, it's definitely poison. You don't have to sugarcoat that. And hindsight always 2020, and I'm glad I can be here to tell this story. A lot of my friends, unfortunately, don't have this opportunity. Um, for me, I had a problem even before my dad got sick, before I lived in Colorado. Um, I have, again, a bad back since I'm 19, so I've always had these kind of proclivities to pain medication. That was my poison of choice, if you will. And it doesn't make it any better that it was aided by a doctor and given to me like any other person. Drug addiction, just like cancer, doesn't discriminate. So for me, once I lost my, or I say once my dad had the diagnosis, I think looking back, I could say subconsciously something changed in my mind. I don't know if I just didn't really care about as much anymore, which, again, looking back, is so counterproductive, especially with everything that my father taught me about how you have to try to be productive and do the best that you can. And I want you to go out and you live your life. I've lived my life already, and I don't want you to put chains on your life because of me. And for me, I almost disrespected him by self medicating to what? Escape a reality that was only going to come faster by doing what I was doing.
Well,
So,
hindsight's 2020. I mean, you did what you had to do just to survive back then. And I mean, you already, it sounds like we're having fun that you shouldn't have been having fun with. And this kind of made it go from like the fun part to the addiction part of coping.
yeah, I mean, I was definitely already addicted, but I think it was just, it took it to another level where I didn't really care if I kept a job. Um, Things just didn't really seem to tangibly matter as much to me at that point. And maybe because I was already in a drug haze to begin with, because I'm sure my dad saw me kind of messed up when I would come visit at home and try to be naive and say, "Oh no, that's not Dusty." But I'm sure we had conversations where he would be like, Dusty, what are you doing with your life? You know, you're 25, 26, 27, whatever it may be. And I think, you know, as he was sick, I should have tried to be better, because that's something that he taught me, try to be better every day. And I was kind of going the opposite way there. So I definitely want to try and help make help people not make the same mistakes that I made.
Well, I will say sharing your story does and will help other people because I feel like maybe even yourself, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, you might have thought you were the only person in the world right there, right then, going through what you were going through, and this was all you had sometimes. So if someone else sees that, I think your message to him is you're not alone and that you should try to reach out before it goes down a path that you can't get out of sometimes.
So you actually bring up a really good point, and that is both with addiction as well as cancer. Today, humans are becoming ever so anti human, anti-social, and we forget how support is the most important thing. I couldn't have gotten over my addiction without my support system, my family, my girlfriend, who is now my wife, my friends as well. And I know that people will go to Alcoholics Anonymous, or maybe you go to Cancer Anonymous or Cancer Survivor Anonymous. Whatever you do to get community, there is no understating how much that helps you in knowing that you're not alone for something. And I think that in a day and age where you can have an AI voice and help you with therapy, or be a shoulder to cry on, we still need people. And those support systems, when we're in our darkest, is really, in my opinion at least, what's helped me, and I think would really help people going forward. So don't shy away from community and support, because I know it's there.
That was amazing. We know that drugs and alcohol seem to have played a major role in a bad part of a period of time. What was the moment or series of moments that you were like, I can't keep doing this? And what changed the projection of where you are now?
Yeah, so after my dad died in July 2019, I had actually been relatively sober for 6 months. The reason being, in January 2019, I was supposed to go in for a two-level spinal fusion surgery. So I
Ooh.
was basically on disability and spending every day with my dad. He was working at home, from home, even though he was sick. And I ended up not getting the surgery. I was declined by insurance. And after my dad passed away, I sent myself away to rehab, because I knew that I didn't have the coping mechanisms to handle what I was going through. So I kind of preemptively sent myself away.
I mean, that's not usually how people come to God with that moment. That's kind of, do you think that's attributed to what your father resembled for you?
Well, I know he would never want me to run away from anything I was dealing with. And at the time, it was extremely hard grieving away from my family. But it wasn't right after he died, it was like a month after he passed away. But
Sorry.
it
Were you
was
still in California? I mean, not
Colorado.
California.
No, I was back
Yeah.
in New York at that time. No.
Okay.
So at that point, I knew that if I didn't go to rehab, something would ultimately end up happening. And my dad was always the person to say, you have to handle yourself. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about your mother. You need to make sure you're okay, because we've been around 30 plus years longer than you have. Um,
It's that old
so,
school.
yeah, very, very. So I sent myself away, and I was away for 45 days. And even after I was away and sober for a little bit, at first I was actually difficult to get into a treatment center, because I had been sober, and I had basically told the people, look, gladly use drugs in front of you. I can come in. How do you want it? Because I wanted help. And it was wild to me that someone who's actively trying to get help couldn't try to find it. Luckily, I had a friend who works in the system, and he was able to get me a place down in Florida. But came back, and I was good for a while until I had some type of work accident. And unfortunately, just like remission and I guess you would call it relapse in the cancer diagnosis, it's a relapse in your addiction recovery. And unfortunately, that's a big part of the story. And I had relapsed, and I've been sober over a little over a year now. But
That's
every
amazing.
day it's a day by day thing. Just the other day I read an article about Philip Seymour Hoffman, how he had been sober 23 years and then died of a heroin overdose. So I'm very cognizant that it's not something that you ever outrun. Kind of, I assume, like cancer. If you end up beating it and you're able to live your life well, you're probably not going to continue to smoke cigarettes. And maybe you're going to take it an extra level and maybe try to keep as much sugar out as possible and do whatever you can to not go through that experience again and
Stay on the
keep
program.
that front of mind.
Yeah.
So I try to not make the same mistake twice. That was something my dad was huge on. But
Well,
I've made the same mistake twice.
I mean, they're just life lessons.
Yeah. As long as you learn them.
Yeah, but I think when you're dealing with addiction, it's a life lesson for the rest of your life that you always have to pay attention to. Because I have friends who've gone down addictions and lost most of them, but the ones that stay around, it's an everyday fight. Some days are easy, some days are harder, but it will be for the rest of your life. You have to know that certain things you just cannot do.
And I assume that's probably like cancer too, right? Like every day I would wake up and say, I'm not going to use today. And some days I'd win that battle, but most days I'd lose that battle to the drugs. And it's probably like cancer where, you know what, today I just want to give up. Today I'm not, I'm done fighting today.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can, tell me more about that. But I understand that. So, if it's anything similar to what, cancer patients are dealing with in terms of the mental anguish that it puts on you, I understand.
Well, I know that from the treatments alone, what they go through is unfathomable for most of them. Just the chemo treatment alone is they are some of the strongest fuckers.
I was about to say, you guys are the strongest warriors we have.
I mean, going through chemo and watching people that you love or friends, or even just when you walk through, um, if you've ever just walked through hospitals and you see the chemo treatment center, just it's like watching the life drain out of them. Yet, if you talk to them, they are always, even on their bad days, they try to give so much inspiration, even when you could tell that is not what they want to be doing right then. There's a certain level of respect and honor that comes from having conversations with people who are just unstoppable. Even when they pass, they did on their terms, even fighting, I feel. So sometimes you gotta find the blessings in the bad, or else the bad will haunt you. All right. So if you take the Dustin now and you see who the Dustin was, what do you think your father would say right now?
I know my dad would be proud of me in the sense that he always told me, want me to know right from wrong. That's the main thing when raising somebody, to be a benevolent human being. Hope that he's proud of me. I work every day, and especially since my sobriety, towards that, to be the man that I knew he raised me to be. And him not being here, um, to not physically see it, to not be at my wedding, to not be able to see my children grow up, that's something that I'm going to have to live with, because I was irresponsible in some of the life decisions that I made. And I know you can't put that all on yourself, and that's life, but we won't get into that. But, I talk to him daily, and a lot of times when I'm in bad situations, I still hear his voice in my head. I know what he would say. So, unfortunately, I don't actually hear what he would say, because if I did, I might have other problems to deal with. But I know what he would say, and we put this quote on his tombstone: "Life is not a dress rehearsal." So if you want to go out and get something, you have one life to live. Go out and get it. And I'm glad you finally straightened yourself out before you lost all your hair like me. He would make a joke like that. Um,
Yeah, that's that old school guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's
Who
he's
likes
an
to
old
roast
school
you.
guy from Queens.
Oh, Queens, yeah. They like to roast you while you're going through some stuff.
It's the only way to be.
But humor is always good in situations like this. It's I feel like there's a joke in there, but we won't joke about these things.
Oh my God, my eulogy, I was cracking jokes left and right. I'm one of those people that have to. Well, yeah, me and my brother. My mom wouldn't even do it. She was too emotional.
Now, because it's been so lighthearted, let's cheer up a little. What's one small thing that instantly makes you happy?
I would say when I come home from work and my wife didn't tell me what we were having for dinner, when I have asked her multiple times because I'm a little weird and I need to get in the mindset of what I want to eat at night, and then she makes like my favorite meal, and just the simple pleasures like that.
What's the secret? What's the meal?
I mean, anything. She's been making some like chicken shawarma. She made homemade Szechuan beef the other day, chicken nachos, beef nachos, like with homemade cilantro lime sauce and homemade chips.
What song always gets you in a better headspace?
I would say Hook by Blues Traveler. I really like that
That's old school.
bluesy, great. Yeah, I don't listen to new music. I never understood older people when they said, this generation's music is terrible. I'm not going to trash the new music and everything like that, but I just don't listen to it. So I would say that it's got good melody, even though the song's kind of about nothing, talking about how if you have a good hook, the song will be
Yeah.
great. And it just really resonates now more than ever. Um, so yeah, I like that. I saw them in
Was not
concert,
expecting
and they
that.
were they put on a pretty good concert. And
Music is always a great way to just take you outside of headspace and
yeah,
just
I mean, they
get
talk
you.
about people with Alzheimer's and how one of the only things that they can remember are musics and songs. So obviously, it has some type of core carnal, you know,
DNA and
feature or something exactly
yeah,
inside of us, because there's not too many things that can bring you back to reality at Alzheimer's. So
music is power. What would one word your friends use to describe you today? Because I have a feeling the old you wouldn't be the same.
intense.
I could see that in a good way or a bad way.
I'm just intense. So I love intensely. I ask questions intensely. I am loyal intensely. I try to learn intensely. Everything I I do it 100%. And I think that's why I fell into the attic camp. And now I'm just channeling that towards positive versus negative.
Well, that's good. I will say, and you could take this for a grain of salt and you could tell me to shut up. But I think hearing your story, knowing the addiction that you had to fight on multiple levels and in different times, and I think that I know that some people always have this search endlessly for it's not so much approval, but you always want to make sure that maybe your father would have approved later on in your life, like you got married, you want to have a family. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think just hearing your story, getting to know you a little bit, I think that the trials and tribulations that you went through, I think that you'll be shocked, but you're probably better off that you went through them because now it gets you to be the greater father figure that your father would have wanted you to be better than him. And I think that teaches you that because you'll know the signs for your kids. You'll see what your father did for you, and you get to now implement all those things and the next level.
Yeah. Um, that's a. I never thought about it like that because I know my dad, like, smoked weed and stuff like that, never had any type of addiction to, pain medication like I did. But being able to draw on these experiences, like my dad would say, it's, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And he would tell me, Dustin, you're kind of being insane. If you keep getting high and you think like all of a sudden you're going to be a millionaire, like you're dreaming. And to be able to take the experiences that I've lived, and because I'm lucky enough to be alive, I'm going to be able to echo that to the next generation and help my kids potentially avoid some of the things that I'm sure my dad tried to have me avoid, but it was always different circumstances. So I know that the addiction is part of my story. I think what you were trying to say is I'm a people pleaser, and that's 100% true. That is a core flaw of a lot of addicts. I much rather see somebody else happy and I will go without. That is something that I've done my entire life. And when I was in treatment, they would actually tell me, Dustin, you need to be more selfish. And I always thought, what do you mean? I've been selfish, like getting high. And they were like, no, being selfish by getting yourself right so you can do right by everybody else. And those are just lessons that I take. And God puts everything in our hands that, he does. What do they say? God doesn't give us anything we can't handle. So I guess it was my time to lose my dad and become the man that I'm supposed to be. And of course, I have regrets and wish I was completely sober, but I can't go back. And obviously, I speak to him all the time now, and I'm sure I'll see him again in hopefully not a couple years, but in a couple decades. And I'll get to ask him if he's truly proud of me.
Oh, he is. He's watching over you.
That I know because I should be next to him right now, and I'm not. So he did not want his partner in crime up there yet.
So I will ask you one follow up question to kind of summarize and wrap it all up. What piece of advice would you give to someone going maybe through a similar situation with losing their father, being a little older, and the temptations of finding ways to escape the reality when they probably should be able to handle the reality because maybe they don't have a support system but they're watching you right now.
Yeah, look, I would say there's always support out there. So whether you find a meeting, you find a community of people, whether that be addiction, if it's you have a loved one who's seeing this, who is an addict, they have Al-Anon groups for family members. I'm sure there are similar groups for people with cancer. The real important thing is to remember that you're not alone. And people there want to help because everybody has been at a lower point and nobody likes to see that on anybody. And what I would say is the escaping that I tried to do only robbed me of time with my loved ones because all it did was push that timeline of anything I needed to deal with, and I still have to deal with it. Anybody who ends up getting sober will tell you you start getting super emotional like after 3 or 4 months. I still get randomly emotional, and I'm like, why am I getting super emotional about watching this guy on the show Love on the Spectrum? Like, why am I getting emotional? And it's because there's just so many emotions that I had repressed for so many years that things will come out just at random times, and that's not healthy for you. Everything that you're feeling is a human emotion, and that's normal. There's nothing wrong with being angry, being scared, being sad, being happy. I made jokes with my dad plenty about morbidity and things like that, because those were some of the only ways that we could cut the tension, because he didn't want to feel like he was out of the ordinary. When I was in treatment, a lot of people didn't want to feel like they were the leper of the community. They were the person who was too sick to be helped. No one wants to feel like that. And as long as you have a community and a support system, you will be able to get better. Like anybody told me in treatment, you give yourself 1 year of trying your best. If your life is not better after 1 year, go back to how your life was. I'll pay for it. Because that's how convinced I am your life won't be better doing things that harm you.
Well, Dustin, it is truly a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for bringing a voice to a different side of cancer awareness that most people don't talk about. So I think this will be very inspiring, very helpful, and educating to people who might be going through something in a similar category. So thank you for your time, and keep kicking ass because you're
Hey,
doing a great job.
if
And your
anybody
father,
if anybody
100%.
needs you, I'm sorry to cut you off. If anybody ever reaches out to you and needs to talk, tell them to send you a DM. I'm happy to chat with them.
We will put your name and number on a billboard.
Don't do that.
Yes, that was very sweet of you, and we will definitely let them know. So, thank you again.